You noticed it maybe 2 years ago, or maybe it was 3. Your parents started making excuses. Too tired, not feeling well, traffic is bad this time of year, and you believed them the first few times because why wouldn't you? But then the pattern became undeniable, and somewhere between the third canceled Christmas and the fourth birthday they skipped, you stopped just feeling concerned. You started feeling something closer to hurt, maybe even angry. And underneath all of that, quietly, you started wondering if it was something you did, if you had said the wrong thing at the wrong moment, if the family had somehow become a place they no longer wanted to be. It is not something you did, but the truth of why this happens is far more complicated and far more heartbreaking than most people ever stop long enough to sit with. And if you have ever stood in a kitchen washing dishes after a gathering your parent chose not to attend, replaying their voicemail excuse in your head, wondering why the excuse felt rehearsed, this is the conversation you have needed to have for a while. What almost nobody tells you is that withdrawal from family gatherings in aging parents is rarely about the family itself. It looks personal. It feels personal. The empty chair makes it feel personal. But what is actually happening in most cases is that the gathering has become a kind of mirror, and what your parent sees in that mirror is something they are not ready to face. A room full of people moving forward, getting married, having children, building careers, building lives. And there they are, standing in the middle of all of it, are feeling like they are somehow moving in the opposite direction. The noise, the laughter, the casual questions about what is new, all of it quietly highlights what they feel they no longer have to offer. They are not pulling away from you. They are pulling away from the version of themselves they can no longer be. And that distinction matters more than most people realize until it is too late to act on it. Something that tends to catch people completely off guard is that aging parents often begin withdrawing not for their own sake, but for yours. There is a particular kind of love that expresses itself through quiet disappearance. Your parent may have started to feel like a burden at these gatherings, not because anyone said something unkind or made them feel unwelcome, but because they are deeply, painfully aware of how much energy it now takes for others to accommodate them. The slower pace of movement, the dietary restrictions, the repetition of stories that everyone in the room has already heard more than once. They love you enough to believe, genuinely and completely believe, that your celebration runs smoother and lighter without them in it. That logic is entirely wrong, and it carves a silent wound into both sides of the relationship, but it is not selfishness. It is love wearing the wrong clothes, and it deserves to be met with patience, not frustration. There is also a layer of grief sitting inside these gatherings that most younger people simply cannot see yet. Not because they are indifferent, but because they have not lived long enough to feel it. Family gatherings are time machines. They pull you back into every version of the same room you have ever stood in. Your parent remembers when they were the ones hosting, when they were carrying trays and refilling glasses and holding the whole event together with nothing but their energy and their presence. They remember the faces that used to fill those rooms and no longer do, the old friends who are gone, the siblings who did not make it this far, the parents of their own who once sat in the very chairs that are now empty. A gathering, when you reach a certain point in life, is not just a celebration. It is a quiet count of everyone and everything that did not make it here with you. Sometimes that count becomes too heavy to carry into a room full of people who are still too young to understand why anyone would struggle to simply smile through it. And rather than dim the room with grief that nobody asked for, they choose the kinder option, in their own minds at least, of not walking in at all. There is also a psychological reality underneath all of this that almost never gets spoken about directly. Researchers who study aging have documented a genuine and measurable shift in how older adults process busy social environments. Crowded rooms become harder to follow. Overlapping voices become difficult to separate and track in real time. The mental
Dad, I've
effort
been thinking
required
about
just
our
to
talk.
keep up with a fast-moving dinner table conversation, to follow who
Go
is
on.
speaking, to catch the joke, to respond at the right moment. is genuinely not the same effort it was 20 years ago. It is real cognitive work. It leaves people drained in a way that has nothing to do with how much they love you or how much they want to be there. And because most aging parents belong to a generation that was raised to treat vulnerability as something close to weakness, they will not say any of that out loud. They will say they are tired. They will say they are not quite feeling themselves. They will allow you to think they are being stubborn or distant before they allow you to see them working hard just to follow a conversation happening right in front of them. That silence, that refusal to admit the struggle, is not pride in the arrogant sense. It is protection. They do not want you to look at them differently. They do not want the way you see them to shift from parent to patient. So they say nothing, and the distance grows. And neither side fully understands why. And sitting underneath all of those layers, quietly, is something rooted entirely in identity. For many parents, their role at a family gathering was not just a role. It was who they were. They were the cook who started 2 days early, the storyteller who knew how to read a room, the person who remembered every preference, every allergy, every small detail about every guest before anyone had to ask. When age begins taking away the physical capacity to play that role, the gathering stops feeling like home. It starts feeling like a stage they no longer belong on. Think about what it actually feels like to return to a place where you were once the most capable person in the room and now need help finding a seat. Think about watching the traditions you built get carried forward by hands that are younger and faster and less tired than yours. That is not something most people talk about openly, but it is something an enormous number of aging parents feel every single time they consider whether to show up, and it is one of the quietest, most underestimated reasons they often decide not to. So, what does that attention look like in practice? You stop waiting for your parent to show up to your version of connection, and you start creating smaller, quieter versions of it that actually fit where they are right now. Not the large gathering with 20 people talking over each other, a Wednesday afternoon with nowhere to be, a slow lunch with no agenda and no clock, a phone call where you let the silence sit without rushing to fill it. You let them tell the story they have told before, because that story is not just a story. It is the piece of their life they can still hold with full confidence and genuine pride. You ask more about the past than the future, because the past is where they still feel capable and articulate and worth listening to. You stop treating their presence as something that needs to be scheduled into a larger event and start treating it as something worth showing up for on its own. And when you do invite them to something larger, you offer them a visible exit before they feel the need to fabricate one. You say, come for an hour, nothing more expected. You lower the weight of showing up so that showing up becomes something they can actually choose without dread. The thing most people miss is that your parent is not waiting for a grand gesture. They are not waiting for a perfect invitation worded just right. They are waiting to feel like their presence matters in a room that is not overwhelming, in a conversation that does not exhaust them, in a moment where they are not quietly measuring how much they are slowing things down. Give them that moment. Give them it without ceremony or announcement. Just show up with no agenda and stay longer than you planned. Here is where all of this becomes harder to carry. The window you have is genuinely not as wide as the pace of everyday life makes it feel. Most people only recognize how far a parent had withdrawn after the withdrawal becomes something that cannot be reversed. After the chair stays empty, not because of an excuse, but because there is no one left to make one. The grief that settles in after that moment does not ease with understanding or with time. It just occupies a permanent corner of the room. This video cannot spare you from that grief entirely, but it can tell you clearly that right now you are still standing on the side of this where something real can change. That matters more than most people allow themselves to believe until they no longer can. Your parent is not trying to make you feel unwanted. They are living inside a chapter that most of us quietly dread imagining, where the world moves faster, than they can comfortably follow, where the face in the mirror belongs to someone they are still adjusting to, where love sometimes looks like stepping back so the people they spent their whole lives raising can move forward without the weight of worry. They still want to belong somewhere. They just need belonging to look quieter, smaller, and far more deliberate than it once did. Go and find them in that smaller place. Because the version of them that still lights up the moment you walk through the door is still there, completely unchanged, waiting without saying so. You just have to stop expecting them to walk through yours first